Good afternoon, sir.
Good evening. So it seems there is only one participant here. Deepika, are you there? Only one student in the class. So I'll start the class in a few seconds. So let me just start today's class. It's based on the explanation of the previous test which you have written yesterday. So there are 20 questions here. The first question was related to election commission, and this was a question which was asked. It has the same kind of independence the judiciary enjoys, of course, because the chief election commissioner can only be removed in the form of a Supreme Court or the judges of the Supreme Court. That means it is not easy to remove the CEC, the chief election commissioner. That's the reason why this particular body has the same kind of independence, and also it is a constitutional body as well. That is the reason why it has independence. So first option is obviously right. The chief election commissioner is appointed by the prime minister. No, he is appointed by the president. So please keep an eye on this kind of terms. Sometimes they confuse you by giving this deliberately confusing you by these terms. So president is the answer here, not the prime minister. So this option you can remove. So check if you can remove two here. So this is removed and this is removed and this is removed. So even without knowing this particular third option is right or wrong, you will be able to choose the correct answer here. So during the election period, the government officers work under the control of the election commission. Yes, it is true. They work under the control of the EC and not the government. So Election Commission of India is a permanent constitutional body, and it is established under the provisions of the Constitution, Article 324. Simple point. So, in accordance with the Constitution of India in 1950, it was made. Both the Election Commission of India as well as the State Election Commission enjoy certain constitutional safeguards because we want them to have that kind of freedom to take their own actions. So, we have given sufficient safeguards in the Constitution of India to secure that they are going to do their functioning in a proper way. So, this kind of independence is important for them. Only if we give this kind of independence, then they will be able to function properly. Otherwise, a constitutional body like this will not be able to take some harsh decisions as well. Okay, so it is explicitly protected under the Constitution from being removed except on the grounds of proven misbehavior or incapacity. So how the judges of India are removed? What are the reasons? Proved misbehavior. If they indulge in misbehavior, and incapacity if they are not in a position to take up the job. What is the meaning of crude behavior incapacity? It is not mentioned in the Constitution. That's the part here. Okay, so like the judge of a Supreme Court or High Court, they can be removed the same way. That's the reason why they have the same kind of independence which judiciary has. Okay, similarly, their conditions of service cannot be altered to his disadvantage post appointment. Once you appoint the election commissioner, after appointing him, you cannot change the conditions of his terms, like you cannot change his salary or his term as well. You cannot change this. Recently, we have seen the example of Andhra Pradesh election commissioner who has been removed by the government suddenly, not by the removal in the form of judges of Supreme Court. He was not removed by the Parliament of the or the Assembly, whatever. He was removed in a different way. His term has been reduced to 3 years. So this is how, by amending the Andhra Pradesh Panchayat Raj Ordinance Act, the Panchayat Raj Act, the Andhra Pradesh government has changed the term of the election commissioner. But even if they change this will be applicable for the next commissioner, but not the current commissioner, election commissioner. That's the point here. The conditions of his service cannot be altered post his appointment. After he is appointed, you cannot alter the services of him. So, and also is appointed by the president. Very simple point. After you appoint this person, you cannot change his service conditions. Later, the other person, even if you bring the law to bring some changes, that will be applicable in the next term, next person, not for the current person. And we discussed already in the class, Constituent Assembly was formed for making the Constitution of India. It was chosen directly by all people, no, and it was elected by the members of existing legislatures. That means like state assemblies, provinces are like states, legislatures are like assemblies. So the Constituent Assembly, which was framed to make the Constitution of India, was primarily not elected by all the members. It was, see, partly elected and partly nominated body. Moreover, the members were indirectly elected by the members of these provincial assemblies, which is this. So, who themselves were elected on a limited franchise. The franchise was not there for everyone. Remember this point. India got universal adult franchise after this Nehru, after the government came into power. So the first elections which were conducted in India during the period of 1951 to 52 were based on universal adult franchise. That means everybody has the right to vote. That was not there before. So limited franchise was there. The Cabinet Mission Plan, which came in 1946, has its own formula to conduct this particular elections for this assembly. Okay, so they suggested indirect elections by members of the assemblies, just like our Rajya Sabha MPs are selected indirectly by our state MLAs. In the same way, this kind of indirect election was there for this Constituent Assembly of India. In addition to these particular numbers, princely states and chief commissioners provinces had 93 and 4. We discussed already this in the class. So total it was 389, but after 389, Pakistan had left. So after Pakistan has left India, there were 299 members in the Constituent Assembly of India. That's the point here. Which is the following statements about the reasons for conducting elections are false. See, elections are not held to evaluate the performance of judiciary. As simple as that. We judge the government. Judiciary is independent. We are not judging the judiciary of the country. People do not vote or remove judges. It is the parliament's role in India to remove the judges. The removal of judges has to be initiated in the parliament only. Their performance is not evaluated on elections basis. It is the part here. These are all rest are all the correct point. Okay, we judge the government. We choose our MP and MLA. We also can choose the persons whose policies interest us. As simple as that. Which of the following is a good reason to say Indian elections are democratic? Democratic elections means you are having free and fair representation. Election Commission is powerful, yes. Everyone above the age of 18 has the right to vote, yes. Democratic, we are allowing everyone to participate irrespective of their caste or religion. In India, the losing parties accept the electoral verdict. Of course, sometimes they will cry, but what happens here is usually they have to accept their verdict. If there are some problems, they may challenge it, but this is also right. Having the highest number of voters is not the guarantee to say that the democratic elections are there. The voters may be less or high, it does not matter. Having a large electorate is no guarantee for considering the elections as democratic. You only have like small countries with small electorate also conducting elections properly. So we cannot say the criteria to have democratic elections is having large number of voters. The size of the voters does not matter. What matters is how free and fair the representation is being given. Next question. People's participation in election is done by the voter turnout. Yes, how many voters have come to vote? That is the part here. Fine. In India, as we discussed in the previous class, it is the poor people who participate in elections in more. Unlike in the US, where the rich people or the privileged people take part in elections more. So, voter turnout, the meaning is percentage of eligible voters. How many voters are eligible to cast their ballot in the election or cast their vote in the EVM, whatever. So voting is the main form of political participation. Like we discussed already, why people vote, because it is a form of your democratic right to have your say in the affairs of the government. So political participation is done in the form of voting. Higher voter turnout indicates large number of people voting in elections. If the turnout is very high, that means lot of people are coming to vote in the elections and they want to take part in the affairs of the country. In India, it is the poor and the underprivileged sections who vote in large proportion. Okay, so what is the summer solstice? So summer solstice is a way where the earth is tilted, right? 23.5 degrees. So here is the sun. So this tilted part, when it comes close to the sun, maximum part, it will be exposed to the sun. That means the day part will be very high. So let me just take you to the desktop just a second. This one. Wait, I think it's this one. Check this part here. This is the sun's rays. The earth is tilted. The axis is around 23.4 degrees. So earth is not a straight, it doesn't have a straight axis to it. It has tilted little bit towards the right and it is 23.4 degrees. See how this part is exposed. The Arctic Circle is exposed here towards the sun's rays. And when this earth comes closest to the sun, what happens here is this part has the maximum amount of sunlight. So this is the northern hemisphere which you are talking about. The northern hemisphere, this is the southern hemisphere. Southern hemisphere, you see the part here. Most part of the northern hemisphere is going to reach to have the maximum amount of light here. It happens in June 21st. On June 21st, the northern hemisphere of the earth will have the larger amount of the sun rays coming and the larger amount of daylight actually. That means the longest day is happening in northern hemisphere on June 21st, called as summer solstice. In the southern hemisphere, it happens on December 22nd, because when it turns again, when this particular earth turns again, so again this part will be exposed than this part. So in December 22nd, when the earth rotates around the sun, that's the reason why this part will be exposed, this part will not be exposed. And that's when the summer solstice happens. So June 21st, or the day of summer solstice, is characterized by great amount of energy from the sun. Yes, on this day, the amount of incoming energy is 30% higher at the North Pole. As we have just seen, North Pole has more number of heat because it is directly exposed to the sun because of the Earth's axis tilt. And the axis means the around which the planet will spin, completing one turn each day, is tilted in a way where the North Pole is seen towards the sun. So as we just saw in the diagram, how the North Pole is facing towards the sun and the South Pole is far away from it. South Pole is in dark. So all these statements are correct. So the explanation already is there here. Summer solstice always falls on June 22nd. At this time, the southern hemisphere has winter solstice. So as of now, we can see we have summer solstice in the northern part, December 22nd, southern part like Australia, New Zealand, they will have around December 22. And you must already know, like Christmas, everybody celebrates when we have winter. It is summer in Australia, and it's very difficult for the Santa Claus people who are having those costumes to be there at the time. It's very hard. What is common among these yama, niyama, bandhas, mudras, and satkarmas? Nothing. It's all about this Ministry of Ayush. Okay, Ministry of Ayush has termed these yoga sadhanas. These particular terms are the names of the different types of sadhanas of yoga. Okay, so Ministry of this Ayush means Ayurveda, Unani. Actually, it's yoga, Unani, Siddha, and homeopathy. All these are the traditional forms of medicine as well. The traditional forms of our heritage. So Ayurveda is there, yoga is there, Unani is there, Siddha is there, homeopathy is there. So this is a ministry also separately constituted for the purpose of promoting these particular forms of medicine, promoting these forms of practices. which are helpful for the people. And this particular ministry has listed Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, Mudras, Shatakarmas. All these are popular yoga sadhanas. Very simple point. These kind of questions are usually expected in the exam. So do keep a note on the current affairs. Which of the following matches? So planet and moon is the criteria here. Saturn, Europa, Jupiter, Enceladus. Actually, these are interchanged. Jupiter is Europa and Saturn is Enceladus. Mars, Phobos, yes. Uranus, Ariel, yes. So 3 and 4 are correct here. Answer is D. So why? Because this is in news. Saturn's moon Enceladus and Jupiter's moon Europa may support life. This kind of news we can see almost every now and then in the papers. So and so planet has been discovered. So and so planet support life. So and so moon of the planet support life. So when these kind of articles come in the news, please keep an eye on that particular articles. You have to know the important moons of different planets. They can be asked in the exam. Important comets or important moons or any icy planets, something which has been discovered in the recent past, which has some significance. You have to note down. Ahoms, the name itself, you can see Ahoms are a very important ethnic group which are present in this Assam. Assam is a place where this dominant tribe is there. Thai Ahom is an ethnic group. Ethnic group usually has same kind of shared culture or say shared history. So ethnic group in India, we have several types of ethnic groups. They are present mostly in the state of Assam, and also some of them are there in Arunachal Pradesh also. One tribe question we can expect in UPSC prelims. So usually now and then they keep asking the names of the tribes. So please make a note of the tribes which are in the news as well. So Ahom tribe, they are descendants of the Thai people who reached Brahmaputra Valley. We all know it's in the Assam. And 1228 is the time when this was established by a king called as Sukapa. Sukapa is the king who established this very famous tribe known to rule continuously for around 600 years. So important in the aspect of Indian history. So please remember this term, Ahoms, ethnic groups, responsible for also fighting with the British as well at that time. So the Mughal invasion. They have resisted the Mughal invasion. So Indian historical point of view, Ahoms are an important tribe. Gyan Kaur was the state of Punjab. Important case talking about the constitutional validity of Section 309. But remember one thing here, in this particular case, they were convicted for Section 306, abatement of suicide. So basically what happened is these two people, the family was there, the in-laws of this girl, she was a daughter-in-law of these two people. The lady is Gyan Kaur and her husband. They made this woman harass the woman a lot, their daughter-in-law a lot, and finally she was, she killed herself. She did suicide. Abatement means you're encouraging, you are making the person to commit suicide. This is in news now also because of Sushant Singh Rajput's unfortunate death by suicide, and Section 306 validity. Because of this Section 306, these people got convicted, and later Section 309 means committing suicide is a sin. It can be punished. So it is still punishable by law. This IPC section, it is IPC 309. So in India, we still have this criminalization of suicide. If somebody is trying to do suicide, and if they fail, and they may be prosecuted for that. So it is wrong to commit suicide as per this provision of the IPC. So this is the thing. A constitution bench had upheld the validity. That means it is valid. 309 is valid. 306 means they are abating the suicide. They are causing the suicide. Duties of the Planning Commission, previously it was there, now it has been gone. Niti Aayog is there now, which is concerned with planning in India. Previously, it also used to do this, all the activities. What they wouldn't do is determine the nature of machinery required for the implementation of plan proposal. That's the part here. Which of the following can help in the government's objective of inclusive growth, having growth for all? Simple term, promoting self-help groups, people who have the means to come together and make their own decisions, try to have their own group for their own development. It is promoting, yes, inclusive growth happens. Promoting small-scale industries like micro, small, medium enterprises. Obviously, if you promote these industries, which are small scale industries, inclusive growth will happen. Implementing the right to education. If you implement the right to education also, the growth will be there for the people. So all the options are correct. Inclusive growth is a concept that means providing equitable opportunities, providing opportunities for all, for economic participants during the economic growth. For example, India is trying to have economic growth. So this growth should be in such a way all the people should be able to benefit from this growth. It's not like only the few people are concentrating and getting the benefits. Inclusive growth takes place when every section of the community benefits from it. So there is a direct link between the macroeconomic and microeconomic determinants of the economy. That means the macroeconomic and microeconomic determinants, the small and the larger parts of the economy are all interlinked with the economic growth concept. Let us have that growth inclusive way so that everybody will benefit from it. Very simple question again, 13th one. Planning Commission is replaced by the Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog means National Institution for Transforming India. Could be same, all options could be like seen like same, but the answer is this: National Institution for Transforming India. So it is a think tank. It is neither established under the constitution nor it is established under an act. So it is a policy think tank which achieves sustainable development goals. Like basically they are talking about the development of India. Cooperative federalism means federalism means division of powers between center and states. So cooperation, let there be some cooperation between the center and the states, and also the states themselves. Federalism is that sharing of powers. So state governments are important players, key players in India's economy. So bottom up approach, from the bottom you have this approach. Otherwise what happens if the benefits are there in the top itself, it is not good. The bottom will be left behind. So let us have a bottom up approach. Let us develop the bottom sector, people who are marginalized. So that kind of approach is there for this particular institution. Planning of India derives its measures from directive principles. Directive principles are like the important documents which talk about what the government should do. Government of India is a welfare state. So this provision of welfare is enshrined in the DPSPs of the Indian Constitution. Directive principles are like some directions given to the government. Please do these kind of things for the people's welfare. So planning is also talking about how to plan economically for the overall development of India. So it takes its objectives and premises from DPSPs. So Planning Commission was set up by a resolution. It was an executive order in 1950. So its objective was to increase standard of living of the people by properly using the resources. First chairman was Jawaharlal Nehru. At present, Narendra Modi was there, but this question is gone. No more Niti Aayog is there now. No more Planning Commission is there in India. It was disbanded by the government in its first term. So the following statements is correct. Very simple question. India has mixed economy. India is neither capitalist nor completely socialist. We have some of the important institutions under public sectors, and also in India we have private players. So Nehru had deliberately chosen the concept of mixed economy. At that time, the capitalist economy was there by the US bloc and socialist economy by USSR bloc, formerly USSR. Okay, now it is Russia. And Nehru has chosen mixed economy with both public and private sector participation. So the factors of production are owned by both. Okay, so blending elements of the market economy means the market will decide everything. In India, we have this also. And also we have some type of state intervention. Sometimes the Indian state will intervene when the situations are not right. So if state interferes, it is the socialist type of thing. If the markets will decide, it is the capitalist thing. So we have the mixed economy in India, public or private, both we have. Now the next question. Various reports are also important for the exam. You have to read various reports and various organizations, what kind of reports they are giving. So this particular report, World Competitiveness Ranking, has been given by this Institution for Management Development. However, UPSC usually asks important reports by World Bank and IMF, etc. So keep an eye on the important reports of these institutions like World Bank, IMF, and sometimes they may ask some different reports which are in news basically. So please do follow the news and make a note of the reports. So the answer here is the IMD. This particular institution prepares the report of World Competitiveness Ranking, in which they have 4 factors: how the economic performance is there, how well the government is functioning, how the business is there, what kind of infrastructure is there in the country. If these all are very good, the country has good competitiveness index. So Singapore, Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland were the top performers. India, as unfortunately, is in the 43rd place. Among the BRICS countries like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, India is ranked second after China. That's some of the one good point which we can say. Global partnership on artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a very hot topic. Like, computer science, it is a part of computer science where the artificial intelligence basically means you have cognitive role. Cognitive role means the power to think, analyze, and make decisions. Artificial intelligence is that kind of a technology where there is cognitive thinking within the systems. Like the computer will automatically think for itself and give the response based on its own perception, how it is perceiving things. That is how it is done by the artificial intelligence. For example, your camera is there. Some of the cameras like Redmi have this artificial intelligence camera. That means they will try to see what conditions, in what conditions you are taking the photo. It will assess by itself and try to apply the best settings for your camera in that particular situation. That is called as artificial intelligence. So very important thing in the world. So India is one of the founding members, yes, and the secretariat is being hosted by the organization called as OECD. In OECD, India is not a member. It is a developed countries forum, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's also, you have to read. Okay, India is not a member of this. India is a founding member of this particular organization, GPAI. Okay, so it's a coalition launched by this on very recently, not even like 1 week, around just, we can say around 1 week has passed. It aims at ensuring artificial intelligence, if it is used responsibly by also respecting human rights. Sometimes human rights issues also may come if you are using lots of technology. So India is a founding member, yes, and details are given here. Very simple. All these countries are a part of this. So basically, they want to have a good cooperation so that they will be able to explore this particular technology and use it in a humane way, and also by respecting democratic values. Misuse of technology is also a very important provision. This is a government scheme. Some questions can be expected from government schemes. Scheme for assistance to disabled persons for purchasing of aids and appliances. Disabled people need special help for their, because they are special differently abled. So this scheme has been launched by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Yes, schemes related to the development of different sections are usually taken up by Social Justice Ministry. So this is a detail of this particular scheme. Any person who has the age of around, has the 40% disability certificate. So disability has different types. Some person is 10% disabled, some person is 90% disabled. So this is the criteria which we have set in the scheme, where any person who has this 40% disability will be able to have benefits. What is the benefit here? So they may be given some kind of assistance to have, for example, if a person has hearing problems, so he may not have the money to buy the aid. So, or some persons who is not having one hand or leg, the limbs, they also may be given some kind of support by the government, because all those are very costly appliances. So this scheme has been constituted for those people by this ministry to assist the needy and disabled persons in procuring durable, sophisticated, and scientifically manufactured modern standard aids and appliances. Why? Because you want to promote their physical, social, and psychological rehabilitation. We need to protect and respect the rights of the disabled. So we have brought this initiative. So this is the criteria: 40% disability, and his income should not be more, because if income is obviously is doing well, then we don't need to help. So if he's earning less than 20,000 per month, and also he should not receive the assistance during the last 3 years for the same purpose from any other source. So only government source has to be accepted for this particular scheme. Now the next question: Kumhar Sashaktikaran Yojana. Kumhar means like potters, Kammari, I think we call in Kummari or whatever in Telugu we call the name. Potters. So this is a scheme meant for the potters. We have to, like, we have several schemes related to several communities. So it is an initiative of Khadi and Village Industries Commission. It is a statutory body. This is also important to understand what is a statutory body, what is not a statutory body. So for the potters and which potters? So they have identified some clusters where there are more number of traditional pottery workers are there. Not everywhere this work is being carried out. So wherever this kind of traditional pottery workers are available, give them the training for having this electric pottery wheels. The benefit of this electric pottery wheels is less pollution, and it is easier to do unlike mechanical things. Okay, and other tools are also given for them. So this kind of assistance is given to this particular community of potters. So both options are right here. Scheme brought by this particular statutory body called as Khadi and Village Industries Commission, responsible for promotion of Khadi and local produce in the villages. So empowerment of potters community is happening, and under this scheme, they are going to identify where this particular traditional pottery is done. For this traditional pottery workers, we are providing electric wheels, pottery wheels. So they are given the name of the states also, which are responsible for doing this. So it is just a scheme. Try to read the schemes which are in the news. So we have recently seen June 21st, International Day of Yoga. United Nations have recognized this particular thing. And what is the theme of the current, the last week's yoga day, which we have celebrated? So the theme for this one is yoga at home, yoga with family. Because of course you have to do it at home. Right now we are supposed to be staying indoors because of this virus, and they have selected this particular theme for this day. So usually for every day they celebrate, they have one specific themes. Haven't seen much of the questions in the recent past in the UPSC civil services prelims asking about the themes, but just keep an eye on the important days and the themes. Just keep an eye on them so that you will be able to answer if at all any question comes in the exam. So yoga at home and yoga for health, yoga at home. So if you have any questions later, you can ask me in the next class. So I'll just end this session right now. Thank you.